Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a frontier. Excuse me about Friday, but we've taken off and I'll show you some photographs of where we went momentarily. Macro thoughts, I think it's all about the dollar. And now, home thoughts. We went to visit Sirikoi Lodge over the weekend, which is in the Lower Conservancy. Willie and Sue are the most wonderful hosts. Willie was brought up in Lake Baringo, which really is the frontier of the frontier, and he hid in the Kakamega forest when he was a young boy because he wanted to stay in Kenya and not return to England. It's a beautiful place, it really is. And we had a lovely time, and they're wonderful hosts. And they've got a giraffe who joined us at breakfast called Nditu. I'll put up that photograph first. I'll put up a photograph of the elephants we saw more than a couple of times, right in front of where we were seated and where we had our breakfast, where D2 came to share some of it with us. I did a few interviews, one with Ian, one with Willie as well, but Ian said there will be a way, there always is, which I thought was quite powerful. And then we had this extraordinary helicopter ride to the top of the Olokwe mountain. We were going to go up Mount Kenya, but it was too cloudy, so we went up to Olokwe. Let me put that photograph up as well. We also visited the Gari Dari forest, where previously we'd met an enormous bull elephant, and the girls had a lovely time swimming. It's really quite cold in the mornings now here in Nairobi, but it feels much colder than that, and I think that's because of the altitude. That took me back to Karen Blixen's I Had a Farm in Africa at the foot of the Ngong Hills. The equator runs across these highlands 100 miles to the north, and the farm lay at an altitude of over 6,000 feet. In the daytime you felt that you had got high up, near to the sun, but in the early mornings and evenings, which were limpid and restful, and the nights were cold. That's the season we're in right now. I like this photograph that Art Nestor tweeted, Southern Ocean, the Antarctica, and it certainly felt like somewhere remote. And then I will quote one quote from Charles Baudelaire: I should like the fields tinged with red, the rivers yellow, and the trees painted blue. Nature has no imagination, he said. Let's move on to politics. There's only one name on the ballot paper, and you're in trouble if you don't vote. North Korea holds its latest election. Each ballot paper lists only one candidate in each district, with a decision over who is selected closely overseen by the party, the Democratic Front for the Reunification of the Fatherland. Turnout is likely to be high, but that's because if you're found not to have taken part, you and your family are in trouble. I'll put up a photograph of the skyline in Pyongyang that Natty tweeted in March, and I wrote a piece in 2010 where I said, far away in distant lands lies the Hermit Kingdom. This land is ruled by the House of Kim, and its capital is Pyongyang. They all had tiny little hands like the Elves and the Shoemaker. And this country has nuclear weapons, and on its border with its neighbour South Korea sit 25,000 American soldiers. France 24 tweeted detentions, protests in China after a revered monk dies. That goes back to my point about the periphery being a tinderbox. On Thursday, a car bomb exploded Thursday night at a security checkpoint in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. And I concluded by saying it's getting closer and closer. Integrity UK put this photograph up of that car bomb in Riyadh and said it was near a high security prison. Salim Amin of A24 Media tweeted on the 16th of July 1960, Emperor Haile Selassie announced the creation of a constitution for Ethiopia. The euro is now just below 108.50. Dollar index about 97.84. Japanese yen 124.26. Swissy 0.9602. The pound is at 155.73. Aussie it's actually having a firm session, 0.7372, marginally higher. India rupee 63.535. South Korean won 11.52.46. Riyadh 318.97. Remember my target of 4. Egyptian pound 783.01 and the rand 1238.23. But I think that's a big sell given what's happened to gold, which I'll get to in a moment. Let me put up a 6-month chart of the dollar index and remind you that my target was 100 and then 110. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 6-month chart, and it now feels as if parity is calling. On the 3rd of November 2014, I said the commodity super cycle is dead in the water. And then overnight we saw an extraordinary price move in gold. Holger tweeted, precious metals routed as sudden drop drives gold to a 5-year low. I'll put up the image he put up. And then Nanex LLC, this chart covers the entire 4 seconds of the first drop, leading to a 20-second halt in gold futures. Going back to that piece I wrote in November last year, the unwinding of the super cycle will take gold below $1,000 an ounce, I said. Gold actually met a wave of selling in Asia that drove it down almost 4% at one stage, as deep as $1,000.88. I'll put up a 6-month chart, and we've now broken down, and I think we've got further to fall. The Saudi kingdom has spent nearly $65 billion of its reserves in the first 5 months of this year. This is a report on the New Yorker. Saudi officials insist that their foreign reserves, which peaked at about $800 billion in mid-2014, allow them to withstand a long period of low oil prices. The kingdom has already spent $65 billion of its reserves in the first 5 months of the year. Let me put up a 6-month chart of crude oil. My target remains $44 on this contract that you're looking at, which is around $51 and change. Africa presidential elections scheduled to take place in Burundi next week are likely to cause major instability and confrontations. This is the United Nations. UN Security Council should take immediate action to prevent the country from sliding into violent conflict. The world is witnessing an escalating pattern of politically motivated violence in Burundi, the UN Special Rapporteur said. The international community must not simply stand by and wait for mass atrocities to unfold, thereby risking a major conflict of regional proportions before it finally decides to act. Now we learn that Burundi talks have been suspended ahead of the polls after the government failed to show up. This was the deal that was being brokered by President Museveni. Jackson Mugani tweeted President Nkurunziza. I'll put up his photograph. Next door neighbours Rwanda's Crystal Telecom shares surged 38% from their IPO price. Good result. South African all shares now up 6.24% this year, and is actually performing better than most across the continent. Dollar rand, as I said, 1238.23. I think it's going to soften up. Site Intel Group tweeted Sinai province of ISIS claiming destroying a frigate of the Egyptian Navy in the Mediterranean Sea with a rocket. And what's more, they posted a photograph of the rocket being fired. The Egyptian said it was not, it was some crossfire and it was not a direct hit. Robert Fisk says, what a choice for Egypt, a megalomaniac president or the madness of ISIS. Images of an Egyptian gunboat exploding off the coast of Sinai last week were a warning to our Western politicians. Yes, we support Egypt, we love Egypt. We continue to send our tourists to Egypt because we support President Field Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, despite the fact that his government has locked up more than 40,000 mostly political prisoners, more than 20,000 of them supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood, hundreds of whom have been sentenced to death, The Egyptian regime continues to pretend that its brotherhood enemies are the same as ISIS, and ISIS, in its dangerous new role as the Islamist power in Sinai, has killed hundreds of Egyptian troops. More than 60 of them 2 weeks ago, after which a military spokesman in Cairo announced that Sinai was 100% under control. However, after last week's virtual destruction of the naval vessel, we might ask, who does control the peninsula? And saying to Egyptians that it all looks a bit different. They are being treated to Sisi's almost Saddam-like mega mind. This includes his grotesque ambitions for a new super capital to replace poor old Cairo, to be completed in a maximum of 7 years, not far from the 2 new lane Suez Canal, which must be finished, and those who know Egypt will literally gasp here, in a maximum of 12 months. Egyptian stock market near the bottom of the range, which was 7,526, we're now at 8,000, just above. Nigeria on autopilot as new president uses time fighting fires. The president appears to be trying to tackle many fronts simultaneously. Staff point out that Mr. Buhari is not a magician. I think he's been very slow on the draw. He needs to deliver some quick wins before he loses the goodwill he earned to get his job. Nigerian all shares down more than 10% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 2% this year. I like this photograph of the Congo River in Africa. It's the deepest river in the world with a maximum depth of at least 722 feet. It was a lovely photo. Coming to Kenya, Kenya aims to project an image of security as President Obama makes his first official visit here this week, in part by reopening the Westgate Mall. He's not reopening it, but it was reopened. Just last week, Fitch has downgraded its credit outlook for Kenya to negative from stable. Economic growth has fallen short of government targets, the ratings agency said, and foreign direct investment in Kenya lags behind that in its country's peers. Fitch said it expected Kenya's growth to improve. It added that the terrorist activity and its adverse impact on the tourism industry will curtail faster growth. Kenya dollar millionaires numbers to grow at more than double global rate over next decade. That's a report Bloomberg was carrying. I like this photograph that Reuters tweeted of Boniface Mwangi's photograph of Muslims performing prayers for Eid to mark the end of the holy fasting month. This was in Eastleigh. Kenya shilling is trading at 102.55. Nairobi all shares down 4.25% this year and at a 2015 low, as is the NSE 20. The market's been on a bear run for a little while now. Once again, thank you for stopping by and wishing you a great week. And obviously, we're all excited about President Obama's visit. Thank you.